The birth of the twin girls brought a mix of joy and dread to Amara's household. As the cries of the newborns echoed through the modest home, her husband, Chinedu, held her hand tightly, tears of happiness in his eyes. However, outside their small bungalow, whispers had already begun to spread. In their family, twins were seen as a bad omen, a curse that could invite misfortune upon everyone. Chinedu, Amara whispered weakly, clutching his hand. Will they accept our daughters, or will they force us to? Her voice broke as she struggled to finish the sentence. Chinedu's face hardened. He looked at his wife, and the tiny bundles in her arms, 12 perfect little girls, who had done nothing but be born into a world that didn't want them. No one will touch my daughters, he said firmly. But even as he spoke, he knew the battle ahead would be brutal. The midwife's departure marked the beginning of their nightmare. Amara sat up weakly, cradling her daughters, while Chinedu paced the room, his mind racing with the implications. The news had already traveled beyond their home. He could imagine the faces of his relatives' elders, whose beliefs were etched in stone, and who would soon come knocking with their judgments. To them, the twins were not blessings, but a curse, harbingers of misfortune, a belief handed down through generations. By dusk, Chinedu's fears became reality. A group of his relatives arrived unannounced, their expressions grim and voices sharp. The leader of the group, his uncle Obiora, stepped forward. He was an imposing man with a voice that could silence a crowd. Chinedu, we have heard the news, Obiora began, his tone laced with authority. Twins are not welcomed in our family. You know the tradition. They must be taken to the forest and left there before sunrise. Amara gasped, clutching her daughters tighter. Her heart raced as she met Chinedu's eyes, pleading silently for him to defend their children. Chinedu's fists clenched at his sides. Uncle Obiora, this is 2024, not 1824. These are my daughters, not animals to be cast away. They are innocent children. Innocence does not change fate. Obiora shot back, his tone unyielding. The gods have spoken through our forefathers. Keeping them will bring ruin to us all. Do you want the land to go barren? For sickness to descend upon the family? Amara, still weak from childbirth, found her voice. If the gods are so powerful, why would they punish innocent children for existing? Why would they destroy a family for something beyond their control? Her voice trembled, but carried a conviction that silenced the room momentarily. Obiora's gaze shifted to her, a flicker of disdain in his eyes. Woman, do not challenge the traditions of men. Your place is to obey, not question. Chinedu stepped in front of Amara protectively. Enough. If these are the gods you serve, then I want no part of them. My daughters will live, and anyone who tries to harm them will answer to me. The room grew tense. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, their authority challenged for the first time in years. Obiora's jaw tightened. You will regret this defiance, Chinedu. The gods do not forgive rebellion. With that, the group stormed out, leaving an oppressive silence in their wake. As the door slammed shut, Amara let out a shaky breath. What do we do now? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Chinedu knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. We protect them, no matter the cost. That night, Amara and Chinedu stayed awake, listening to the sounds of the night, every creak and rustle outside filling them with dread. They knew Obiora wouldn't let this go. Their defiance wasn't just against him. It was against an entire system of beliefs that had controlled their family for generations. The weight of it was suffocating. Amara stared at her daughters, who were swaddled together and sleeping peacefully on a makeshift cot. They were so small, so fragile, yet they carried the burden of being born into a world that already condemned them. She reached out and gently brushed her fingers against their soft cheeks, tears welling up in her eyes. How could anyone see them as anything but a blessing? She whispered. Chinedu, seated by the window with a machete in hand, didn't reply. His eyes scanned the darkness outside, alert for any sign of movement. "We need to leave this town," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "If we stay, they'll come for them. I won't let that happen." Amara turned to him, her heart sinking at the thought of abandoning the life they had built. "Leave? To where? Where can we go that this curse won't follow us?" "It's not a curse," Chinedu said firmly, looking at her. "It's ignorance, fear, and superstition, and I won't let those things dictate our lives." But deep down, even he wasn't sure where they could find safety. The beliefs that condemned twins as abominations weren't limited to their family. They were rooted in the broader culture of the region. Still, he had to try. For Amara, for their daughters. As dawn broke, Chinedu began making preparations. He packed what little they could carry: clothes, food, and some money he had been saving. Amara watched him silently, her heart heavy. She knew leaving was the right thing to do. But the uncertainty of their future loomed over her like a dark cloud. Their departure was quiet and hurried. Chinedu carried one of the twins, while Amara carried the other, their few belongings slung over his shoulder. They avoided the main roads, slipping through back alleys and side streets, constantly looking over their shoulders. The town that had once been their home now felt like a trap, its walls closing in on them. It wasn't until they reached the outskirts of the town that Amara allowed herself to breathe a little easier. But their relief was short-lived. As they crossed a narrow footbridge over a stream, they heard voices in the distance. "Stop right there!" Chinedu froze, his heart pounding. Turning slowly, he saw Obiora and two other men standing at the edge of the bridge, blocking their path. Each man carried a weapon: a machete, a club, a knife. "You thought you could run from us?" Obiora sneered, stepping forward. "You're a fool, Chinedu. The gods see everything, and they will not allow you to bring this curse into the world." Amara clutched her daughter tightly, her mind racing. Chinedu stepped in front of her, his machete drawn. "If you want to take my daughters, you'll have to kill me first," he said, his voice like steel. Obiora chuckled darkly. "If that's what it takes to protect this family from ruin, so be it." The tension on the bridge was palpable, the air thick with the promise of violence. Amara's heart raced as she looked at the menacing figures in front of them and the rushing water below. She knew Chinedu would fight to his last breath to protect their family, but the odds were against them. And then, as if on cue, the twins began to cry. Their tiny, piercing wails cut through the tense silence, echoing in the still morning air. It was a sound so raw and pure that it made everyone pause, even Obiora. For a moment, there was only the sound of the twins crying and the rushing water beneath the bridge. Amara stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "Listen to them," she said, her eyes locking with Obiora's. "They are just babies. They haven't done anything wrong. How can you justify killing them for something they didn't choose?" Obiora's expression faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, but he quickly masked it with anger. The gods gave them life," Amara interrupted, her voice growing stronger. "If they wanted them dead, they wouldn't have let them be born. You talk about protecting the family, but what kind of family kills its own children out of fear?" Her words hung in the air, challenging everything Obiora believed. The other men exchanged uneasy glances, their grip on their weapons loosening. Chinedu seized the moment. "You've lived your whole life in fear of the gods," he said, his voice steady. "But I choose to believe in a God who doesn't punish children for existing. If you can't accept that, then stay here and live in fear. But we're leaving, and you won't stop us." Without waiting for a response, Chinedu turned and began walking across the bridge, his machete still in hand. Amara followed closely behind, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Obiora didn't follow. He stood there, watching them disappear into the distance, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. Hours turned into days as Chinedu and Amara traveled through winding paths and dense forests, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the town. Their daughters, Ada and Chisom, cried intermittently, their wails slicing through the silence of the wilderness. Amara did her best to soothe them, but the exhaustion of the journey was taking its toll. Chinedu led the way, his eyes scanning the terrain for any signs of danger, his machete never far from his grasp. They had no clear destination in mind, only the hope of finding a place where they could live without fear of persecution. The road was harsh. Their small bundle of provisions quickly ran out, forcing them to rely on streams for water and forage for wild fruits. Amara's once pristine wrapper was now torn and stained with mud, but she didn't care. All that mattered was keeping her daughters safe. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they stumbled upon a small clearing by a riverbank. Chinedu decided they would rest there for the night. He built a fire with trembling hands, his body worn from the unrelenting pace of their escape. Amara laid the twins on a blanket and rocked them gently, humming a lullaby to drown out the fear in her own heart. "Do you think we'll ever find peace?" she asked Chinedu, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her, the firelight dancing in his tired eyes. "We will," he said firmly, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. "We have to." As the night deepened, the sounds of the forest grew louder, crickets chirping, leaves rustling, and the distant howls of animals. Amara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She clutched the twins tightly, her heart racing. Suddenly, there was a noisy, sharp crack of a twig breaking. Chinedu shot to his feet, his machete at the ready. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the darkness. For a moment, there was no response. Then, a figure stepped into the light of their fire. It was a woman, her face weathered but kind, her clothes simple and well-worn. She held up her hands in a gesture of peace. "Don't be afraid," she said, her voice calm. "I'm not here to hurt you." Chinedu didn't lower his machete. "Who are you? What do you want?" "My name is Neka," the woman replied. "I live in a village not far from here. I heard the cries of your babies and came to see if someone needed help." Amara stepped forward, her maternal instincts overriding her fear. "Our daughters, they're twins. We had to leave our town because they were considered an abomination." Neka's expression softened with understanding. "You're not the first to flee because of such beliefs," she said. "My village, it's different. We don't see twins as a curse. You can come with me if you'd like. It's not much, but it's safe." Chinedu exchanged a glance with Amara. They didn't have many options, and the promise of safety was too tempting to ignore. After a brief discussion, they decided to follow Neka. The journey to the village was short but tense. Chinedu kept his machete close, ready to defend his family if it turned out to be a trap. But when they arrived, the sight before them took their breath away. The village was small but bustling with life. Children played in the open square, women carried baskets of yams and vegetables, and men worked on fishing nets by the river. It was a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere they had left behind. "This is it," Neka said, leading them to a modest hut. "You can stay here for as long as you need. The people here won't harm you. Many of us have rejected the old ways and believe that all children are a gift." Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to hope. She clutched Chinedu's arm tightly. Maybe we found our refuge," she whispered. But as they settled into their new life, they quickly realized that even this haven wasn't without its challenges. While many in the village welcomed them, there were whispers and side glances from a few who still clung to old superstitions. One evening, as Chinedu worked in the fields with the other men, an elder approached him. His name was Easy, and he was known for his wisdom, but also his adherence to tradition. "You've brought twins into this village," he said, his tone measured but firm. "Not everyone is comfortable with that. I'm not saying you're unwelcome, but you must tread carefully. Change is slow, and not everyone will accept it easily." Chinedu nodded, his jaw tightening. "I understand, Elder, But my daughters are innocent. They deserve a chance to live without fear. Ease regarded him for a long moment before nodding. Then make them see what you see. Show them that your daughters are not a curse, but a blessing. It will take time, but hearts can change. Chinedu took those words to heart. Over the coming weeks, he and Amara worked hard to integrate into the village. They joined in communal activities, shared their story with those willing to listen, and demonstrated their unwavering love for their daughters. Slowly but surely, the twins began to win over even the most skeptical villagers. Ada and Chisom, now a few months old, became symbols of resilience and hope. Their laughter filled the village, their smiles melting even the hardest of hearts. But just as things seemed to be settling, a shadow from their past loomed on the horizon. One crisp morning, as the sun cast a golden glow over the village, Chinedu noticed a group of unfamiliar men approaching from the direction of the forest. They were dressed in simple but coordinated attire, their expressions serious. His stomach tightened as he recognized one of them, Chief Obiora, the elder from their former town. Amara, busy bathing the twins near the river, saw the tension in Chinedu's posture and immediately sensed danger. She gathered the twins in her arms, her heart racing. Chief Obiora and his men entered the village square, their presence disrupting the peaceful atmosphere. Villagers paused their activities, curiosity and unease evident in their faces. Neka was the first to step forward. "Who are you, and why have you come here?" she asked, her tone firm but polite. Obiora's gaze swept over the crowd, finally landing on Chinedu. "We're here for them," he said, pointing. "Chinedu and his wife have brought a curse upon our land. Their twins are an abomination. They fled before justice could be served, and we cannot allow this evil to spread." A murmur rippled through the villagers, a mix of disbelief and anger. Neka stepped in front of Chinedu, shielding him from Obiora's accusing finger. "This is not your town, and your beliefs have no power here," she said sharply. "These children are innocent, and their parents have done nothing wrong." Obiora sneered. "You speak as though you understand the will of the gods. Twins are a sign of imbalance, a punishment for sins. If you shelter them, you bring doom upon your own people." Chinedu clenched his fists, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "My daughters are not a curse. They are a blessing, a gift that you were too blind to see. We left your town to protect them from your ignorance, and we will not let you harm them now." The tension in the square was palpable. Obiora's men shifted uneasily, their confidence wavering in the face of the villagers' solidarity. But before the situation could escalate further, a shrill cry pierced the air. It was Chisom, one of the twins, her small voice rising in distress. Amara tried to calm her, but the baby's cries seemed to carry a weight far beyond her tiny frame. As if drawn by an unseen force, Obiora turned toward the child. Chisom, though barely old enough to sit on her own, met his gaze with an intensity that froze him in his tracks. Her tiny hand reached out, and for a moment it seemed as though the air itself shifted. Obiora stumbled backward, his expression one of shock and confusion. What is this?" he stammered, his bravado crumbling. The villagers watched in awe as Chisom's cries transformed into soft coos, her small form exuding a sense of calm. Ada, her twin, joined in, her laughter like the tinkling of bells. The two babies seemed to radiate an unearthly serenity, their presence filling the square with a quiet power. Neka stepped forward, her voice resolute. "These children are not a curse. They are a sign, a reminder that we must move beyond fear and ignorance. You came here seeking to destroy, but perhaps it is you who need saving." Obiora's men began to retreat, their courage faltering in the face of the inexplicable. Obiora himself seemed lost, his rigid beliefs shaken to their core. He turned to Chinedu, his voice barely above a whisper. Perhaps I was wrong." Chinedu didn't respond, his focus solely on his daughters. He knelt beside them, his heart swelling with pride and love. Over the weeks that followed, the twins continued to astound the villagers with their intelligence and charm. By the time they were barely a year old, Ada and Chisom exhibited an uncanny ability to mimic sounds, recognize faces, and even communicate in ways far beyond their age. Ada, the elder by a few minutes, was particularly observant. She could point to objects when asked, and seemed to understand conversations, often reacting with knowing smiles or frowns. Chisom, on the other hand, was more vocal, her babbling sounding eerily like full sentences at times. Amara and Chinedu marveled at their daughter's development, their hearts swelling with both joy and trepidation. Were their children truly special, or was it merely the product of love and nurture? Either way, they vowed to protect them at all costs. But not everyone in the village was convinced. Ease, the elder who had previously warned Chinedu, voiced his concerns during a council meeting. "Their abilities are unusual," he said, his tone cautious. "While it may seem like a blessing now, we must consider the possibility that their presence could attract unwanted attention." Neka countered, her voice strong. "Unusual does not mean dangerous. These children are a testament to what humanity can achieve when fear is replaced with love. If anything, they are a symbol of hope." The debate continued, but one thing was clear. Ada and Chisom's presence had irrevocably changed the village. They were no longer seen as an abomination, but as a force for good, challenging long-held beliefs and inspiring a new way of thinking. Yet, as the twins grew, so did the shadows of their past. Whispers of their story reached far and wide, drawing the attention of both allies and adversaries. And one fateful night, under the light of a full moon, a visitor arrived at the village gate. The visitor was cloaked in a flowing garment of deep indigo, the hem lined with intricate golden patterns that shimmered under the moonlight. His face was partially obscured by the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat, but his presence radiated an undeniable authority. The guards at the gate exchanged wary glances, their hands instinctively moving toward their spears. "I come in peace," the man said, his voice calm but commanding. He raised his hands slightly, a gesture of surrender. "I wish to speak with the family of the twins." News of the visitor spread through the village like wildfire, stirring a mix of curiosity and unease. Chinedu and Amara, alerted by a young boy sent to fetch them, hurried to the village square where the stranger waited. They carried the twins, who had grown increasingly curious about the world around them, their bright eyes taking in every detail. Neka was already there, standing protectively near the visitor, but keeping her distance. The villagers gathered in hushed clusters, their expressions a mix of awe and suspicion. "Who are you, and what business do you have with this family?" Neka asked, her tone firm but measured. The man removed his hat, revealing a face marked with deep lines of wisdom and experience. His piercing eyes seemed to see through everyone present. "My name is Obina," he said. "I am a scholar from the far lands beyond the great river. I have heard tales of these extraordinary children and the upheaval they have caused. I come not to harm but to understand." Chinedu's jaw tightened. "Understand what?" "They are our daughters. Nothing more, nothing less." Obina's gaze softened as he looked at the twins. Ada reached out toward him, her small fingers grasping at the air, while Chisom studied him intently, her expression unusually serious for a child her age. "I understand your defensiveness," Obina said gently. "But you must realize that their story has traveled far. Some view them as a miracle, others as a threat. If you wish to protect them, you must prepare for what lies ahead." The crowd murmured, and Amara stepped forward, holding the twins closer. "We've already faced enough challenges just keeping them safe. What more could possibly come?" Obina's expression darkened. "More than you can imagine. The world is not as kind as this village. There are those who would exploit their abilities for power, and others who would seek to destroy them out of fear." A cold silence fell over the square. Chinedu clenched his fists, his protective instincts flaring. "Then teach us," he said. "If you truly mean no harm, help us prepare." Obina nodded. "That is why I am here. But first, you must understand the depth of their gift. Tell me, have they displayed unusual intelligence or abilities?" Amara hesitated before answering. "They are different. Ada understands far more than any child her age should, and Chisom, her voice, has a way of calming even the most restless soul." Obina's eyes lit up. "As I suspected. These children are not ordinary. Their gifts are rare and powerful, but they are also dangerous if not guided properly." Neka, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "And what would you suggest? That we send them away to be studied like animals?" "Not at all," Obina replied. "My purpose is to help you protect them, to teach them how to harness their abilities safely. But I must warn you, this path will not be easy." Chinedu exchanged a glance with Amara. Their love for their daughters was boundless, but the weight of the decisions they faced was immense. "What do you need from us?" he finally asked. "A commitment," Obina said simply. "I will stay here for as long as it takes, but you must trust me completely. If we succeed, your daughters could grow into forces of great change. But if we fail," he trailed off, the unspoken consequences hanging heavy in the air. The villagers watched in silence, their collective breath held as Chinedu and Amara made their decision. Finally, Amara nodded, her voice steady. "We will do whatever it takes to protect our daughters." Obina smiled faintly, though his eyes remained serious. "Then we begin tomorrow. But know this: what lies ahead will test your strength, your love, and your resolve in ways you cannot yet fathom." As the crowd dispersed, whispers of hope and fear filled the air. Chinedu and Amara carried the twins back to their hut, their minds swirling with questions. Who was Obina, really? And what kind of future awaited their family? But as they laid the twins to sleep, one thing was certain. Their daughters were no longer just children. They were the harbingers of something far greater, destiny, that could reshape not only their lives but the world itself. The weeks that followed Obina's arrival were a whirlwind of revelations. True to his word, he stayed to guide the twins, unveiling layers of their abilities that both amazed and unsettled their parents. Ada's mind was sharper than anyone could fathom, solving puzzles and understanding concepts far beyond her years. Chisom, with her soothing voice, could calm the most furious arguments in the village, her words weaving a spell of harmony wherever she spoke. But as the family adjusted to their extraordinary reality, the first signs of trouble began to stir. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, a loud knock echoed on the family's door. Chinedu opened it to find two strangers standing there, their expressions guarded but firm. "We are emissaries from the Council of Elders in the capital," one of them announced, his voice clipped and authoritative. "We have heard tales of your daughters, and we have come to verify the truth of these claims." Amara appeared at the door, her heart racing. "And if the claims are true?" she asked cautiously. The second emissary, a woman with piercing eyes, stepped forward. "Then they must come with us. Such talents cannot remain hidden in a village. They belong to the world." Chinedu's grip tightened on the doorframe. "They belong to us. They are our daughters, not subjects for your council to parade around." The emissaries exchanged a glance, their patience wearing thin. "This is not a request," the woman said sharply. "If you resist, you will face consequences far beyond what you can imagine." Obina, who had been quietly observing from a corner of the room, stepped forward. "With all due respect," he said calmly, "these children are not tools for political gain. They are under my guidance, and I will not allow them to be exploited." The male emissary sneered. "And who are you to defy the council?" "I am someone who understands the weight of their destiny," Obina replied evenly. "And I will protect them. no matter the cost. The tension in the room was palpable. Ada and Chisom peeked out from behind a curtain, their innocent faces filled with confusion. Amara hurried to usher them back inside, shielding them from the escalating conflict. The emissaries finally stepped back, their expressions cold. "You have until the next full moon to reconsider," the woman said. "If the children are not handed over willingly, we will return with force." As they disappeared into the night, Chinedu slammed the door shut, his face a storm of anger and fear. "What do we do now?" he asked, turning to Obina. "We prepare," Obina said gravely. "The council will not back down, but neither will we. If they come for the twins, they will find that this family is not so easily broken." The days that followed were filled with tension and secrecy. Obina taught Chinedu and Amara how to defend their home, while also training the twins to understand and control their powers. The villagers, once hesitant, began to rally behind the family, inspired by their courage. But as the full moon approached, the atmosphere grew heavy with dread. On the appointed night, the council's forces arrived at an imposing group of soldiers and officials, their torches lighting up the darkened village. Chinedu stood at the forefront, his shoulders squared and his resolve unshaken. Beside him were Amara and Neka, their faces set with determination. Obina stood slightly apart, his presence commanding but calm. The emissaries stepped forward, their expressions unreadable. "This is your last chance," the male emissary said. "Hand over the children or face the consequences." Chinedu took a deep breath, his voice steady. "You'll have to go through us first." What followed was a confrontation unlike anything the village had ever seen. The twins, sensing the danger, displayed their abilities in ways that left everyone stunned. Ada's sharp mind turned their surroundings into a battlefield, using the terrain to outwit the soldiers. Chisom's calming voice disrupted their aggression, causing them to hesitate and falter. In the end, it was not brute strength that won the night, but the unity and resilience of the family and the villagers. The council's forces retreated, their plans thwarted by a family they had underestimated. The story of Ada and Chisom carries a profound lesson about the strength of family, unity, and resilience in the face of adversity. It highlights the importance of standing firm in your values and protecting what you hold dear, even when the odds are against you. The twins' journey also underscores the idea that extraordinary gifts come with great responsibility, and that true strength lies not in power, but in how it is used. In the end, the family's unwavering love and determination not only protected the twins, but also inspired a community to stand together, proving that even in the darkest times, light can prevail through courage and unity.